The stars had always been cold and uncaring. Admiral Yuki Tanaka had learned this truth 17 years ago, when humanity first reached beyond their small blue world and discovered they were not alone. The galaxy was old, the galaxy was vast, and the galaxy did not care about one more species crawling out of the dirt. She stood on the bridge of the UHS Prometheus, watching the tactical display with steady eyes. 340 enemy warships filled the screen. They surrounded a convoy of civilian transports like wolves circling wounded prey. 12 million human lives hung in the balance. "Admiral," said Commander Hassan, his voice tight with controlled fear. "The convoy reports the Vreth have begun jamming their communications. They estimate hostile weapons range in 6 minutes. Tanaka did not respond immediately. She studied the enemy formation with the careful attention of a surgeon examining a patient. The Vreth Dominion had brought 200 ships. Their insectoid crews were ruthless and efficient. The crystalline Sorath hegemony had contributed 80 vessels, their geometric hulls glittering like deadly jewels. The aquatic Diluvians had sent 60 of their organic-looking craft, their hulls grown rather than built. 3 ancient powers, 3 species that had sailed the stars for thousands of years before humanity learned to make fire, and they had come together for one purpose: to teach the young human species a lesson about territory and power. "Admiral?" Hassan prompted. "I see them," Tanaka said quietly. She turned to face her bridge crew. Men and women from every nation on Earth looked back at her. Some were afraid. All were determined. "Signal the convoy to maintain course and speed. Tell them help has arrived." "Ma'am, with respect," said Lieutenant Chen at the communication station. "There are 340 hostile warships out there. We are one ship." Tanaka allowed herself a small smile. Yes, they should have brought more. The Prometheus was not a beautiful ship. It was 2 kilometers of angular black metal and massive engine arrays. It looked brutal and functional, like a weapon that had been designed by people who understood that war was not about glory or honor. War was about survival. War was about making sure your enemies died and your people lived. Humanity had learned hard lessons since joining the galactic community. 3 colonies burned in the first 5 years. Pirates and raiders struck human shipping with impunity. The elder races watched and did nothing. Some even profited from the chaos, buying human resources at desperate prices and selling weapons to both sides of every conflict. The Prometheus was humanity's answer to those lessons. "Helm, set intercept course," Tanaka ordered. "Weapons, begin charging primary systems. All hands to battle stations." Alarms rang throughout the massive warship. Over 8,000 crew members moved to their positions with practiced efficiency. They had trained for this moment for 3 years. Every drill, every simulation, every sleepless night had led here. The enemy fleet detected their approach. Tanaka watched as the hostile formation shifted, turning to face this new threat. She could imagine the confusion on alien bridges. One ship? The humans had sent one ship against 340? "We are being hailed," Lieutenant Chen reported. "Multiple frequencies. The Vreth commander demands we identify ourselves and withdraw immediately." On screen, the main display flickered, and a Vreth commander appeared. The insectoid alien was massive, its chitinous body covered in ceremonial armor. Multiple eyes focused on Tanaka with cold intelligence. Behind it, other Vreth officers clicked and buzzed in their strange language. "Human vessel," the Vreth commander said, its voice translated by automatic systems. "You intrude upon lawful territorial action. These shipping lanes have been claimed by the Dominion. The convoy has violated our space. Withdraw now, or share their fate." Tanaka clasped her hands behind her back. "Commander, I am Admiral Yuki Tanaka, of the United Human Ship Prometheus. Those civilians are under my protection. You will stand down and allow them to pass." The Vreth made a sound that might have been laughter. "One ship threatens 3 fleets. Human arrogance is amusing. You have earned nothing in this galaxy. You own nothing. You are children playing at the games of adults. We will teach you your place." "You misunderstand," Tanaka said calmly. "I am not threatening you. I am giving you one chance to survive. Take it or leave it." The Vreth commander's eyes narrowed. "Destroy them." The screen went dark. "Enemy fleet is moving to attack formation," Hassan reported, detecting weapons charging across all hostile vessels. "Time to engagement." 4 minutes. Tanaka settled into her command chair. Around her, The bridge crew worked their stations with focused intensity. There was fear in the air, but also something else. Something that humans had carried with them since the first cave dweller picked up a rock to defend their family. Determination. "Lieutenant Park," Tanaka said to the weapons officer, "activate the gravity lance." Gravity lance charging. "Admiral." 30 seconds to full power. The Prometheus began to hum. Deep within the ship, reactors that had taken 20 years to develop poured energy into systems that the galaxy had never seen. Humanity had spent those 2 decades in secret, studying every piece of alien technology they could buy, steal, or salvage. They had combined it with their own innovations. They had built something new. "Enemy fleet entering weapons range," Hassan announced. "They are firing." The first wave of missiles and energy beams crossed the void between the fleets. Hundreds of projectiles, each one capable of destroying a conventional human warship. They closed the distance at incredible speed. "Shield harmonics active," reported the defensive systems officer. Redirecting. The Prometheus did not simply block the incoming fire. Its shields caught the enemy weapons and turned them around. Missiles reversed course. Energy beams reflected back along their original paths. The enemy fleet's own attack slammed into their forward vessels. 6 ships exploded. "Gravity lance ready," Park reported. Tanaka pointed at the tactical display. "Target the Vreth command cluster. Fire." The Prometheus shuddered as it released a weapon that should not have existed. The gravity lance did not fire projectiles or energy. It fired distorted space itself. A beam of gravitational force crossed the distance to the enemy fleet in an instant. The Vreth flagship simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, 2 kilometers of armored warship. The next moment, it had been compressed into a ball of matter no larger than a fist. The ships around it were caught in the gravitational wake. Their hulls crumpled and tore. 30 vessels destroyed in a single shot. Silence fell across the bridge. Tanaka's voice was steady. "Helm, take us into their formation. Weapons, switch to rapid-fire configuration. Show them what we can do." The Prometheus accelerated forward. It moved faster than any ship of its size should have been able to move. The enemy fleet tried to respond, but they were in chaos. Their command structure had been destroyed in seconds. Individual captains made individual decisions, and none of those decisions were good enough. The human warship tore through their formation like a blade through paper. Secondary weapons batteries fired in all directions. Each shot was precisely aimed by an artificial intelligence that could track thousands of targets simultaneously. Enemy shields that had never failed against conventional weapons failed now. Hulls that had withstood centuries of combat tore open under the assault. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 47 minutes. When it was over, the void was filled with debris. 340 warships had been reduced to drifting wreckage. Emergency beacons flashed from escape pods. Some crews had been able to abandon ship before the end. Many had not. The convoy was safe. Admiral Tanaka stood at the viewport, watching the destruction she had caused. Her reflection stared back at her from the transparent aluminum. She looked tired. She looked old. She looked like someone who had just changed the course of history and was not sure if that was a good thing. "Ma'am," Commander Hassan said quietly, approaching her side. "The convoy commander is requesting to speak with you. He wants to thank you." Later, Tanaka did not turn from the viewport. How many enemy survivors? Approximately 12,000 in escape pods. Another 8,000 estimated to be on disabled vessels awaiting rescue. Launch search and rescue operations. Pick up everyone we can, regardless of species. Hassan hesitated. "Admiral, those ships were trying to kill 12 million of our people, and now they are beaten." Tanaka finally turned to face him. "We are not them, Commander. We do not leave people to die in the void when we have the power to save them. Begin rescue operations." "Yes, ma'am." As Hassan moved to carry out her orders, Tanaka returned her gaze to the debris field. She knew what would happen next. The galaxy would learn of this battle. They would learn that a single human ship had destroyed 3 combined fleets. They would learn that humanity possessed weapons beyond anything they had imagined, and they would be afraid. Fear was a dangerous thing. It could make enemies surrender. It could also make them desperate. The elder races had ruled the galaxy for a long time. They would not accept a challenge to their power easily. They would scheme and plot and plan. They would look for ways to neutralize the threat. The Prometheus had saved 12 million lives today. But it had also started something that could not be stopped. Humanity had announced itself to the galaxy in fire and thunder. There would be consequences. Tanaka touched the viewport with her fingertips. Out among the stars, in council chambers and throne rooms and command centers, the powerful were already reacting to what had happened here. She could feel it, like pressure building before a storm. Was it worth it? She murmured to herself. She thought of the convoy. 12 million people who would have died today. Families and children and workers and dreamers. They would go on to live their lives because the Prometheus had been here. They would never know how close they came to death. And that was fine. That was how it should be. Yes, she decided. It was worth it. The bridge continued its work around her. Reports came in from across the ship. Damage assessments were minimal. Ammunition expenditure was lower than projected. The crew was tired but triumphant. They had done the impossible. Lieutenant Chen looked up from her station. Admiral, I am receiving transmissions from multiple sources. News networks across the sector are broadcasting reports of the battle. Our combat records are being shared on all major frequencies. The Sorath survived in enough numbers to transmit recordings, Hassan said. The whole galaxy will know within hours. Tanaka nodded slowly. She had expected this. The Prometheus was never going to remain secret forever, but she had hoped for more time. Time to build more ships. Time to prepare humanity for what was coming. That time was gone now. Contact Earth Command, she ordered. Priority Alpha. Tell them the cat is out of the bag. Project Prometheus is now public knowledge. We need to prepare for the response. Yes, Admiral. The Prometheus turned away from the debris field and began moving toward the convoy. Rescue shuttles launched from its bays, spreading out to collect survivors from the void. Human medics would treat alien wounds. Human crews would pull alien sailors from dying ships. The same species that had just demonstrated terrifying power was now showing mercy. Tanaka wondered if the galaxy would understand what that meant. Probably not. The elder races thought in terms of dominance and submission. They would see the rescue operations as either weakness or a calculated political move. They would not understand that humans simply could not leave people to die when they had the ability to help. It was one of the things that made humanity different. One of the things that made them dangerous in ways the galaxy had not yet realized. The convoy commander finally came through on communications. His face appeared on Tanaka's personal screen, tears streaming down his cheeks. He was an older man, gray-haired and weathered. Behind him, Tanaka could see families hugging each other, children crying with relief. Admiral Tanaka, he said, his voice breaking. I don't have words. We thought we were dead. We had made our peace, and then you came out of nowhere and... He stopped, unable to continue. You are safe now, Tanaka told him gently. Continue on your course. We will escort you to the colony. How can we ever thank you? Tanaka considered the question. Live good lives, she said finally. Raise your children. Build your communities. Be worthy of the future we are fighting for. That is, thanks enough. The convoy commander saluted, a gesture that seemed inadequate for what he was feeling. The screen went dark. Tanaka leaned back in her chair and closed her eyes. She was exhausted. The battle had not been physically demanding for her, but the weight of command was always heavy. Every decision she made affected thousands of lives. Today, her decisions had saved millions and killed tens of thousands. History would judge her. She knew that. Some would call her a hero. Others would call her a monster who introduced weapons of mass destruction to the galaxy. Both perspectives would have some truth to them. All she could do was make the best choices she could with the information she had. Today, the choice had been clear. Tomorrow, it might not be so simple. Admiral, Hassan said, breaking into her thoughts. Earth Command has responded. They are convening an emergency session of the United Nations Space Council. Your presence is requested as soon as possible. Tell them I understand. We will return to Earth after the convoy is safely delivered. They are also asking about the battle records. They want to know if we can keep them classified. Tanaka laughed, a short and humorless sound. The Sorath have already broadcast those records to half the galaxy. There is nothing left to classify. The universe knows what we can do now. We just have to live with the consequences. She stood and straightened her uniform. There was still work to be done. Rescue operations to oversee. Convoy escort to complete. Reports to write. The life of an admiral did not stop just because she had changed the course of galactic history, but as she walked across the bridge, She allowed herself one moment of pride. Her crew had performed perfectly. Her ship had exceeded all expectations. Humanity had faced its greatest challenge and emerged victorious. Whatever came next, they would face it together. That was the human way. It had been the human way since the first tribes gathered around fires in the darkness. When threats appeared, humans came together. When enemies attacked, humans fought back. When the odds seemed impossible, humans found a way. The galaxy was old and powerful, and did not care about the young species from the third planet of an unremarkable star. But humanity was starting to teach the galaxy a new lesson. Sometimes, the young had something to offer that the old had forgotten. Sometimes, the small could stand against the great. Sometimes, a single ship could change everything. Admiral Yuki Tanaka looked out at the stars that had once seemed so threatening and smiled. The universe had tried to break humanity. It had failed, and now humanity would show the universe what they were truly capable of. The first chapter of a new era had been written in fire and light among the stars of the Ketharon Nebula. It was only the beginning. The Galactic Concord Council had not seen a full assembly in 800 years. The last time all 17 member species gathered in one place, it was to end a war that had killed billions. Now they gathered again, and the reason was a single battle fought by a single ship. Ambassador James Chen walked into the great chamber with his head held high. He was a tall man, thin and precise in his movements. His gray suit was simple compared to the elaborate garments worn by the alien delegates around him. But he did not feel small. He had seen the recordings from Ketharon. He knew what his species had accomplished. The great chamber was an enormous dome floating in space, built at the gravitational center between three star systems. Its walls were transparent, offering a view of the infinite void in all directions. 17 platforms surrounded a central speaking area, each one designed for the specific environmental needs of its species. The Vreth platform was filled with angry clicking and buzzing. Their ambassador, a massive female with battle scars across her chitin, watched Chen with undisguised hatred. The Vreth had lost the most ships at Ketharon. They wanted blood. The Sorath delegation glittered under their special lighting. The crystalline beings communicated through patterns of light that flickered across their faceted bodies. Their ambassador, Threnvax, was ancient even by their standards. He had negotiated treaties when humanity was still learning to farm. He did not speak, but his light patterns conveyed cold fury. The Diluvians floated in their water-filled platform, their tentacles waving in slow patterns. They were perhaps the calmest of the three powers that had attacked the convoy. But Chen knew better than to mistake calm for friendly. The Diluvians played the long game. They would not forget what had happened. Around the chamber, the other 14 species watched with varying degrees of interest, fear, and calculation. Some were old allies of the three attacking powers. Others were rivals who saw opportunity in chaos. All of them were trying to understand what the human warship meant for the balance of galactic power. Chen took his place on the human platform. It was the smallest and most recently constructed, added only 15 years ago, when humanity was granted observer status in the Concord. They still did not have full voting rights. They were still considered a minor species, barely worth the attention of the elder races. That was about to change. "This emergency session is called to order," announced the mediator, an artificial intelligence that managed council proceedings. Its voice was neutral and calm, designed to cause no offense to any species. "The matter before us is the incident at Ketharon Nebula. Ambassador Threnvax of the Sorath hegemony has requested to speak first." Threnvax's crystalline form brightened as he moved to the central platform. His light patterns were translated into spoken words by the chamber's systems. "Honored delegates, what happened at Ketharon was an atrocity. 3 fleets engaged in lawful territorial operations were destroyed without warning by a human weapon of unprecedented power." Chen wanted to interrupt, to point out that those lawful territorial operations involved the massacre of 12 million civilians. But he held his tongue. There would be time to speak. The human vessel employed technologies that violate multiple Concord conventions, Threnvax continued. Gravity manipulation weapons, adaptive shield systems, combat prediction algorithms of clearly artificial origin. Each of these technologies is restricted or forbidden by treaties that humanity has signed. We signed those treaties under the understanding that we would receive the same protections as other species, Chen said, unable to remain silent. We did not receive those protections. Our colonies burned. Our ships were attacked. Our people died, and the Concord did nothing. You will wait your turn to speak, Threnvax replied, his lights flashing with irritation. The human species has demonstrated that it cannot be trusted with advanced technology. They have developed weapons capable of destroying entire fleets. Today, it was our ships. Tomorrow, it could be our worlds. The Concord must act to contain this threat before it grows beyond our ability to stop. The Vreeth ambassador rose on her platform, her many legs clicking against the metal surface. The Dominion supports the Soreth position. Human weapons must be eliminated. Human military power must be reduced to safe levels. They have proven they cannot be trusted with the responsibility of force. One by one, other delegates voiced their agreement. The Diluvians spoke of galactic stability. The machine collective called the Axiom Consensus provided calculations showing the destabilizing probability of human weapons. Even species that had no part in the Ketheron incident expressed concern about the precedent being set. Chen listened to it all. He watched former enemies put aside their differences to unite against his species. He saw the fear behind their words, the calculation behind their speeches. They were not acting out of principle. They were acting out of self-interest. When his turn finally came, he walked to the central platform and looked around the chamber. 17 species, thousands of years of history, an entire galaxy arrayed against humanity. You speak of stability, he began, his voice clear and steady. You speak of treaties and conventions, and the proper balance of power. These are fine words, noble concepts, but let me tell you what they mean to humanity. He paused, making eye contact with delegates around the room. 17 years ago, my species left our homeworld and discovered that we were not alone. We were overjoyed. We thought we would find friends among the stars. We thought we would join a community of enlightened beings who had moved beyond the violence that plagued our own history. He shook his head slowly. Instead, we found this. A galaxy where the strong take what they want and the weak suffer. A galaxy where 3 powers can decide to murder 12 million civilians over a trade dispute, and the response of this august body is to punish the species that stopped the massacre. The convoy violated our territorial claims, the Vreeth ambassador interrupted. They had no right to those shipping lanes. Your territorial claims were filed 16 hours before the attack, Chen replied calmly. We have the records. You manufactured a legal excuse to destroy our people. And now you are manufacturing another legal excuse to disarm us so you can finish what you started. The chamber erupted in angry voices. Chen waited for the noise to die down before continuing. 3 human colonies were destroyed in our first 5 years among the stars. 200,000 people died. We appealed to the Concord for protection. We were told that these were internal matters, territorial disputes, unfortunate incidents. We were told to be patient, to trust in the process, to wait for justice. Justice never came, so we built our own. He looked directly at Threnvax. The Prometheus was not built because we wanted power. It was built because we needed to survive. You left us no choice. You taught us that the galaxy does not protect the weak. You taught us that survival must be taken, not given. And now you are angry that we learned the lesson too well. Pretty words, Threnvax responded, his light patterns conveying contempt. But they do not change the facts. You have built a weapon that threatens the stability of all civilized space. You have shown that you are willing to use it. The Concord cannot allow this to continue. What would you have us do? Chen asked. Disarm ourselves? Surrender our only protection? So that the next time 3 fleets decide to murder our civilians, there will be no one to stop them? The Concord will provide protection, a Diluvian delegate offered. If you demonstrate good faith by surrendering your forbidden weapons, we will guarantee your security. Chen laughed. It was not a happy sound. You will guarantee our security. The same Concord that watched our colonies burn. The same Concord that did nothing when our ships were attacked. The same Concord that filed the Ketheron incident under territorial dispute before a single shot was fired. He stepped forward, his voice rising. We trusted you once. Our people died because of that trust. We will not make the same mistake again. The session continued for hours. Arguments were made and countered. Proposals were offered and rejected. But the outcome was never really in doubt. The elder races had already decided what they wanted. The session was merely theater, a legal framework for the action they intended to take. The final vote was 15-2. The Prometheus Accords were adopted by the Galactic Concord. Under the terms of the Accords, humanity was required to surrender all extinction-class weapons and technology within 60 standard days. This included the Prometheus itself, along with all research data, manufacturing facilities, and personnel associated with its development. Human military forces would be reduced to defensive levels, as determined by a Concord Oversight Committee. Failure to comply would be considered an act of war against the entire Concord. Military response would be authorized. Chen listened to the verdict with a stone face. When the mediator asked if the human delegation had any final words, he stood slowly. "You have made your decision," he said quietly. "Now humanity will make ours." He turned and walked out of the chamber without looking back. The news reached Earth within hours. Protests erupted in every major city. People who had celebrated the Ketharan rescue now faced the reality that their salvation had come with a price. The galaxy wanted their protector destroyed. Admiral Tanaka received the message aboard the Prometheus, still orbiting Earth, after returning from the convoy escort. She read the Accords carefully, noting every clause and provision. When she finished, she set the document aside and stared out the viewport at her homeworld below. Commander Hassan found her there an hour later. "Admiral, the crew is asking for guidance. They want to know what happens next." "What do you think should happen next, Commander?" Hassan considered the question carefully. "The Accords are unjust. Everyone knows that. But the alternative is war against the entire galaxy. We cannot win that war. Even the Prometheus has limits." "Yes," Tanaka agreed. "It does." She turned to face him. "But consider this. If we surrender the Prometheus, what happens to humanity? We go back to being what we were before. Weak, vulnerable, dependent on the mercy of species that have shown us no mercy. At least we would survive." "Would we?" Tanaka shook her head. "I do not think so. The Vreth want revenge for Ketharan. The Soreth want to remove a potential rival. The Diluvians want our resources. Without the Prometheus, there is nothing to stop them from taking what they want. So we refuse the Accords?" "We refuse the Accords." Tanaka's voice was firm. "We refuse to be disarmed. We refuse to surrender our future to powers that want to destroy us. If the galaxy wants to take the Prometheus, they will have to come and get it." She pressed a button on her console. "All hands, this is the Admiral. You have heard about the Prometheus Accords. You know what the galaxy is demanding. I will not lie to you. The days ahead will be hard, but I want you to know this. We did nothing wrong at Ketharan. We saved innocent lives. We defended our people, and we will continue to do so, no matter what the cost." Across the ship, 8,000 crew members listened. Many were afraid. All were determined. "The galaxy thinks we are young and weak. They think we will bend. They think we will break. They are wrong. Humanity has faced darkness before. We have faced impossible odds before, and we are still here." She paused, letting her words sink in. 60 days. That is how long we have before they come for us. 60 days to prepare. 60 days to show the universe what humanity can do when our backs are against the wall. I know many of you have families on Earth, on the colonies. I know you are scared for them. So am I. But I also know this. The best way to protect our families is to stand firm. If we surrender now, we surrender forever. Our children will grow up as servants to alien masters. Our grandchildren will never know what it meant to be free. I refuse to allow that. I refuse to give up our future. So this is my promise to you. We will not surrender. We will not break. We will face whatever comes together, as humans have always faced challenges together. And when the storm has passed, we will still be standing. Because that is who we are. That is what we do." She ended the transmission and turned back to the viewport. Earth hung below her, blue and green and beautiful. Billions of people looking up at the stars, wondering what would happen next. "Admiral," Hassan said quietly, "do you really believe we can survive this?" Tanaka was silent for a long moment. "I believe in humanity," she said finally. "I believe in our ability to adapt, to innovate, to overcome. I believe that when we are pushed, we push back harder. I believe that the universe has never seen anything quite like us." She looked at Hassan with eyes that held both fear and hope. "Is that enough? I do not know. But it is what we have. And it will have to be enough." The 60 days began. Across human space, preparations started immediately. Factories that had been building civilian goods converted to military production. Scientists worked around the clock to improve existing technology and develop new defenses. Civilians volunteered for training programs in numbers that overwhelmed the system. And in secret facilities hidden throughout human territory, something else was happening. Something that would change everything. The Prometheus had always been just the beginning. Humanity had not spent 20 years developing only one ship. They had developed a technology, a system, a philosophy of warfare that could be applied in many ways. The galaxy thought they were demanding the surrender of a single weapon. They did not understand that they were demanding the surrender of an idea. And ideas, once born, could not be destroyed so easily. The storm was coming. But humanity was not planning to simply survive it. They were planning to master it. The 60 days passed. Humanity did not comply. On the 61st day, the largest military fleet in galactic history arrived at the borders of human space. 712 species had contributed ships. Some sent entire battle groups. Others sent only a handful of vessels, token forces to show their support for the Accords. But together, they formed a wall of steel and fire that stretched across light years. They called it the Containment Fleet. Admiral Threnvax commanded from his flagship, a massive Sorath vessel called the Crystal Mandate. He had been given this honor as the primary architect of the Prometheus Accords. The Vreth had wanted the command, but their rage over Ketharan made them unsuitable for what was intended to be a long, patient operation. This would not be a battle. It would be a siege. All vessels report in position, his aide announced, light patterns flickering rapidly. The blockade is complete. Nothing larger than a personal shuttle can enter or leave human space without our detection. Threnvax's crystalline body pulsed with satisfaction. Excellent. Begin passive observation. There will be no aggressive action, unless the humans attempt to breach the line. Understood. And if they do attempt to breach, then we demonstrate that the Prometheus, powerful as it is, cannot fight the entire galaxy alone. The strategy was simple and cruel. Cut off from galactic trade, human colonies would slowly starve. Their economy depended on imports of rare materials, foodstuffs, and technologies they could not yet produce themselves. Within a year, perhaps two, the blockade would force them to accept the Accords or watch their civilization collapse. It was a tested strategy, used many times throughout galactic history. Young species who showed too much promise were contained until they learned their place. Some broke quickly, others took longer, but eventually, all of them bent the knee. Threnvax had no doubt that humanity would do the same. Inside the blockade, the situation was grim. Admiral Tanaka studied the supply reports with growing concern. The numbers told a harsh story. Food reserves would last 18 months with strict rationing. Industrial materials would run out sooner. Medical supplies were already in short supply on outer colonies. We cannot survive a 2-year siege, Commander Hassan said, stating the obvious. The math does not work. No. Tanaka agreed. It does not. Which means we need to change the math. She had called a meeting of her senior staff aboard the Prometheus. Around the conference table sat the best minds in the human military. Fleet commanders, logistics experts, intelligence officers, and scientists who had helped design the very ship they sat in. The blockade is designed to strangle us slowly, Tanaka continued. They expect us to grow weak, to fight among ourselves, to eventually surrender. That is what has happened to every other species in our position. She stood and walked to the window. The stars beyond seemed closer now, more threatening. Every point of light represented another enemy waiting for humanity to break. But we are not every other species. She turned to face her staff. The Concord thinks they understand us because they have studied our history. They know about our wars, our divisions, our worst moments. They expect us to fracture under pressure. They do not understand what happens when humanity is pushed to the edge. They do not know that our greatest achievements have always come in our darkest hours. They do not see what I see when I look at our people. Admiral Chen of the Second Fleet leaned forward. With respect, Admiral, inspiration alone will not feed our colonies. We need a concrete plan. We have one. Tanaka returned to the table and activated the holographic display. A map of human space appeared, showing their 14 colony worlds and the ring of enemy vessels surrounding them. The blockade is their strength, but it is also their weakness. She pointed to the display. 700 species contributed ships, 700 command structures, 700 sets of traditions, rivalries, and competing interests. They are united only by fear of us. That unity is fragile. You want to break the coalition politically? Hassan asked. Eventually, yes. But first, we need to survive. And to survive, we need to stop thinking like victims and start thinking like the species we actually are. The plan she outlined was ambitious, perhaps impossible. Instead of trying to break through the blockade directly, humanity would turn inward. Every colony would become self-sufficient. Every resource would be maximized. Every person would contribute to the survival of the whole. But more than that, they would use the time the blockade gave them to prepare a surprise. The Prometheus was never meant to be our only weapon, Tanaka explained. It was a proof of concept, a demonstration of what was possible. The real program has been running in parallel for years. She changed the display. Instead of the blockade, it now showed schematics for a new class of warship, smaller than the Prometheus, but carrying many of the same technologies, faster, more maneuverable, and designed to be produced in large numbers. The Prometheus protocol, she said. We have the infrastructure, we have the technology. What we need is time and resources. The blockade, ironically, gives us both. How does a blockade give us resources? Chen asked. Because it makes us efficient. In normal times, we waste incredible amounts of material and energy. Competitive industries duplicate efforts. Consumer goods are designed to fail and be replaced. Resources flow to entertainment rather than survival. The blockade changes all of that. She smiled grimly. The Concord thinks they are starving us. They are actually forcing us to become the most efficient civilization in the galaxy. Every scrap of metal will be used. Every kilowatt of energy will be directed to purpose. Every human will contribute. The message went out across human space. Admiral Tanaka spoke to billions of people, explaining the situation with brutal honesty. She did not promise easy victory. She did not hide the challenges they faced. Instead, she asked for something harder. Faith in each other. We are surrounded by enemies who want to see us broken, she said, her image broadcast on every screen in human territory. They believe we are weak because we are young. They believe we will shatter because we are few. They have forgotten something important about our species. She paused, and across 100 worlds, humanity listened. We were forged in struggle. When our ancestors faced extinction from ice ages, they adapted and survived. When plague swept through our populations, we learned medicine and survived. When we created weapons that could destroy our entire world, we stepped back from the edge and survived. Every challenge we have faced has made us stronger. Every enemy we have confronted has taught us new ways to fight. We are not a species that lies down and dies. We are a species that gets up, again and again. No matter how many times we are knocked down. They want us to break? Let them watch. Let them see what humanity does when our backs are against the wall. Let them learn what happens when you give us a reason to unite. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Factories across human space retooled overnight. Civilian workers became military engineers. Scientists who had spent careers competing against each other now shared research freely. Old national divisions that had survived even the colonization of space dissolved as humanity faced a common enemy. On Earth, the great industrial centers of Asia, Europe, and the Americas coordinated for the first time in history. Raw materials flowed to wherever they were needed most. Designs were shared, improved, and shared again. A factory in Germany would develop a new manufacturing technique and send it to Korea within hours. A laboratory in Brazil would solve a problem that had stumped researchers in India, and the solution would be available to everyone by the end of the day. On Mars, the orbital shipyards began their secret work. The first new cruisers took shape in hidden construction bays, their specifications known only to a handful of people. Each ship was smaller than the Prometheus but carried the essential technologies that had made the great warship so devastating. Gravity lances, shield harmonics, predictive combat systems, the weapons that had destroyed 3 fleets at Ketharan. The colonists on distant worlds suffered the most. They were farthest from Earth's resources, most vulnerable to supply shortages. But they did not complain. They rationed their food and shared what they had. They converted every usable space into hydroponic farms. They recycled everything, wasting nothing. Children who should have been in school learned practical skills instead. how to maintain life support systems, how to grow food in limited space, how to repair equipment with improvised parts. A generation grew up knowing that survival was not guaranteed, that it had to be earned every single day. And through it all, Admiral Tanaka's message played on repeat. We do not break. 6 months into the blockade, the Concord began to notice something strange. Human industrial output, which they had expected to collapse, had actually stabilized. Their spy satellites detected new construction in the orbital shipyards. Their intelligence networks reported unprecedented levels of coordination among human military forces. Threnvax received the reports with growing concern. This does not match the projections, he told his staff. By now, they should be showing signs of internal conflict. They should be debating surrender. Instead, they are building. Building what? His aide asked. That is what concerns me. Our sensors cannot penetrate their shipyard defenses. We know something is being constructed, but not what. He made a decision that would later prove critical. Maintain the blockade, but increase our state of readiness. The humans are planning something. I want to be prepared for whatever it is. But the containment fleet had grown complacent over the months. 700 species did not coordinate easily. Different crews operated on different schedules. Some species required specific environmental conditions that others found uncomfortable. Political rivalries between nations that had contributed ships led to petty conflicts over jurisdiction and protocol. Officers who had arrived expecting a short campaign grew bored. Strategy games and entertainment programs spread through the fleet. Discipline, while not forgotten, was no longer the top priority. After all, they outnumbered the Prometheus thousands to one. What could one ship possibly do? Inside the blockade, Admiral Tanaka watched the enemy fleet with quiet satisfaction. Her intelligence officers had painted a detailed picture of the containment fleet's condition. She knew about the coordination problems. She knew about the declining readiness. She knew that her enemies had made the same mistake that powerful forces always made when facing a weaker opponent. They had stopped taking humans seriously. 11 months into the blockade, she called another meeting of her senior staff. This time, the mood was different. Tired faces showed hints of hope. Hard work was beginning to pay off. Report, she ordered. Admiral Chen pulled up the latest production figures. The Prometheus protocol is ahead of schedule. We have 400 cruisers completed or near completion. Crews are trained and ready. We can begin operations at your command. Supply status? Commander Hassan answered. Tight, but manageable. Rationing has been successful. Most colonies have achieved near self-sufficiency in food production. Industrial materials remain the biggest constraint, but we have enough for the planned operation. Tanaka nodded slowly. And the enemy fleet? Spread thin and overconfident, her intelligence chief replied. Their patrols are predictable. Their response times have slowed. Most importantly, their formation is designed to contain a single ship. They are not prepared for a distributed attack. Tanaka stood and looked around the table. These men and women had worked miracles over the past 11 months. They had turned a death sentence into an opportunity. They had built a fleet from nothing while surrounded by enemies. They had never stopped believing. We have been patient, she said. We have endured. We have sacrificed. And now we are ready. She activated the holographic display one final time. It showed the blockade, but now with new information overlaid. Attack vectors, target priorities, coordination signals. The plan they had been developing in secret for almost a year. In 3 days, we break the blockade, not with one ship, but with 400, not in one place but in 17. We will hit them everywhere at once, before they can react, before they can coordinate, before they understand what is happening. She looked at her officers with fierce pride. They thought they were starving us. They thought they were breaking us. They were wrong. They were forging us into something stronger, something harder, something they have never seen before. In 3 days, we show the galaxy what humanity becomes when you push us to the edge. In 3 days, we remind the universe why they should never have made us their enemy. The officers rose to their feet. No cheers, no applause, just grim determination and quiet confidence. They had a job to do. They would do it. Admiral Tanaka turned back to the viewport. Out beyond the glass, the containment fleet waited in their patient siege. They thought time was on their side. They thought every passing day brought them closer to victory. They were about to learn how wrong they were. The storm was coming, and humanity was ready to ride it. The attack began at 0347 hours, Coordinated Universal Time. Humanity had chosen the hour deliberately. It was the moment when the largest number of enemy crews would be at their lowest readiness. Caught between shifts, dulled by routine, Admiral Tanaka stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching the countdown reach 0. Around her, her crew worked their stations with focused intensity. They had trained for this moment for nearly a year. Every simulation, every drill, every sleepless night had led here. All units report ready, Commander Hassan announced. 400 cruisers in position across 17 attack points, awaiting your order. Tanaka took a deep breath. The next few minutes would determine the fate of humanity. Either they would break the blockade, or they would be destroyed trying. There was no middle ground. Execute Prometheus Protocol, she said. All units. Attack. Across 17 different sectors of the blockade, human warships emerged from hidden positions and engaged the enemy simultaneously. The containment fleet, spread thin to cover all possible approaches, suddenly found itself under attack everywhere at once. The first reports reached Admiral Threnvax within seconds. His aides' light patterns flashed with alarm as damage assessments flooded in. Multiple contacts, human vessels engaging across the entire blockade line. They are not retreating. They are attacking with weapons signatures matching the Prometheus. Threnvax's crystalline form flickered with shock. That is impossible. There is only one Prometheus. The readings are confirmed, Admiral. Multiple ships carrying gravity-based weapons. They are cutting through our formations like the Prometheus at Ketharan. Threnvax finished. He had watched those recordings 100 times, studying the human warship's capabilities. He had planned for confronting that single vessel. He had not planned for confronting 400 smaller versions of it. Order all units to battle stations. Coordinate defensive formations. We need to. An explosion rocked his flagship. The crystal mandate shuddered as something struck its shields with terrible force. We are under direct attack, his aide reported. A human cruiser has engaged us. Our escort screen is trying to intercept, but they cannot match its speed. Through the viewport, Threnvax saw the enemy vessel. It was perhaps 1/5 the size of the Prometheus, angular and aggressive in design. It moved through his escort formation with contemptuous ease, its weapons firing in precise patterns that dropped ship after ship. The Vreth had a saying, "The prey that learns to fight becomes the predator." Threnvax understood that saying now. Humanity had spent 11 months as prey, trapped in their own space, slowly strangling. And in that time, they had transformed themselves. Fall back, he ordered. All ships, fall back to rally point 7. We need to regroup. But the fallback order could not be executed smoothly. The containment fleet's coordination problems, which had been minor annoyances during the blockade, now became fatal weaknesses. Different species interpreted the order differently. Some retreated immediately. Others tried to cover their allies' withdrawal. Others still ignored the order entirely, their commanders too proud to run from an inferior species. The human cruisers exploited every moment of confusion. They struck at command ships first, decapitating enemy formations. Without leadership, the already chaotic retreat became a rout. Ships collided trying to escape. Weapons fire struck friendly targets as identification systems failed under the pressure. Admiral Tanaka watched the chaos unfold from the Prometheus bridge. Her ship was positioned at the center of the heaviest enemy concentration, drawing their attention while the cruiser fleet did the real damage. The Prometheus was still the most powerful vessel on the field, and the enemy knew it. Enemy fleet, attempting to concentrate fire on our position, Hassan reported. 67 vessels converging. Good, Tanaka replied. Let them come. Every ship that focuses on us is a ship not defending the blockade line. The Prometheus had been upgraded during the 11 months of siege. New weapon systems, improved shields, faster engines. It was even more devastating now than it had been at Ketharan. The converging enemy ships found this out the hard way. Gravity lances carved through their formation. Shield harmonics turned their own missiles back against them. The Prometheus's combat AI predicted their movements and positioned the ship to exploit every weakness. One by one, the attacking vessels were destroyed or disabled, but Tanaka took no pleasure in the destruction. She watched each enemy ship die and saw the crew members who would never return home. This was necessary. This was survival. But it was not glorious. "Admiral," Lieutenant Chen said from the communication station, "we are receiving signals from multiple enemy vessels. They are requesting terms of surrender." Tanaka considered for a moment. "Accept their surrender. Any ship that powers down weapons and shields is to be left alone. Broadcast on all frequencies. We will honor surrenders. Any crew that wants to stop fighting can do so safely." Hassan looked at her with surprise. "Admiral, we have them on the run. Why give them a way out?" "Because we are not fighting to destroy them, Commander. We are fighting to survive. Every ship that surrenders is a ship we do not have to kill. Every crew that lays down arms is 1,000 enemies who might become something else someday." The broadcast went out. Across the battlefield, enemy captains faced a choice. They could continue fighting against a foe that had demonstrated terrifying capabilities, or they could accept mercy from the very species they had tried to starve into submission. Hundreds chose surrender. The battle raged for 72 hours. It was not a single engagement but a series of running fights spread across light years of space. Human cruisers hunted enemy formations. The Prometheus struck at concentrations of force. And slowly, inevitably, the containment fleet collapsed. Threnvax managed to rally a portion of his forces at Rally Point 7, but it was only a fraction of the original fleet. The rest had been destroyed, captured, or scattered beyond hope of regrouping. The blockade that had held for 11 months was gone. In his command chamber aboard the Crystal Mandate, Threnvax faced the impossible reality. The humans had won. Not just a battle, but the war. The containment fleet was broken. The Prometheus Accords were meaningless. Everything the Conquered had worked for was dust. His aide approached carefully. "Admiral, the human flagship is hailing us. Admiral Tanaka wishes to speak with you." For a long moment, Threnvax did not respond. Then he straightened his crystalline form and moved to the communication platform. "Put her through." Admiral Tanaka's face appeared before him. She looked tired. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her uniform was wrinkled from days of continuous duty. But her gaze was steady and clear. "Admiral Threnvax," she said, "the battle is over. Your fleet is defeated. I am contacting you to discuss terms." "Terms of surrender?" Threnvax asked, his light patterns dim with resignation. "No. Terms of peace." Threnvax's form flickered with confusion. "I do not understand. You have won. You could press your advantage. Our remaining forces are scattered and demoralized. You could destroy us completely." "Yes," Tanaka agreed. "We could. But that is not what we want." She leaned forward slightly, her expression earnest. "Admiral, we never wanted this war. We wanted to be left alone. We wanted to protect our people. We wanted to be treated as equals, not as inferiors to be bullied and starved. You tried to break us. You failed. Now we could take revenge. We could hunt down your scattered fleets and destroy them one by one. We could strike at your homeworlds while your defenses are weakened. We could make you pay for every day of the blockade, for every child who went hungry, for every family that suffered." She paused, and something softened in her expression. "But we will not, because that is not who we are." Threnvax was silent for a long moment. His people prided themselves on logic, on rational calculation of costs and benefits. By any logical measure, the humans should press their advantage. They should eliminate threats while they had the power to do so. That was how the galaxy worked. That was how survival was ensured. And yet, they were offering peace. "What do you want?" he asked finally. "We want recognition," Tanaka replied. "Full membership in the Concord, with all rights and privileges. We want the Prometheus Accords dissolved. We want our people to be treated with the same respect as any other species. And we want a promise that what happened at Ketharon, what you tried to do to our convoy, will never happen again. That is all? That is everything." Tanaka's voice was firm. "We do not want your territory. We do not want your resources. We do not want to rule the galaxy or dominate other species. We just want to exist. We want to live and grow and explore the stars like everyone else." Is that really so much to ask? Threnvax thought about the history of his own species, the wars they had fought, the enemies they had crushed, the younger races they had contained. It was a history of dominance and survival, of taking before being taken. It was the only way he had ever known. But looking at this human, This admiral who had just won an impossible victory and was now offering peace instead of demanding submission. He wondered if perhaps there was another way. A better way. A way that his ancient species had forgotten long ago. "I cannot speak for the Concord," he said slowly. "But I can speak for the hegemony. We will accept your terms. We will advocate for peace." Tanaka nodded. "Thank you, Admiral. Order your remaining ships to stand down. We will provide medical assistance to any crews that need it. Your wounded will be treated with the same care as our own." The communication ended. Threnvax stood alone in his command chamber, surrounded by the silence of defeat. But it was not the crushing silence he had expected. There was something else in it, something like hope. He gave the orders. The fighting stopped. Across the former blockade zone, human and alien ships ceased fire. Medical vessels moved between fleets, treating casualties regardless of species. Rescue operations began for crews stranded in damaged ships. The galaxy watched in astonishment. News of the battle spread faster than light, carried by communications networks that spanned civilizations. Every species that had contributed to the containment fleet learned of its defeat. Every power that had voted for the Prometheus Accords saw those accords reduced to irrelevance. But what shocked them most was not the human victory. It was what the humans did with that victory. They did not pursue the retreating fleets. They did not strike at vulnerable colonies. They did not demand reparations or territory or slaves. They simply stopped fighting and offered peace. In council chambers across the galaxy, leaders tried to understand what they were seeing. The Vreth warrior scholars debated for days. The Diluvian strategists recalculated their models again and again. The Axiom consensus ran simulations that returned impossible results. A species that had just demonstrated the power to destroy anything in its path was choosing not to use that power. A civilization that had every reason for revenge was offering mercy instead. An enemy that had won was extending its hand in friendship. It was unprecedented. It was inexplicable. It was terrifying in ways that weapons alone could never be. Admiral Tanaka returned to Earth as a hero. Crowds lined the streets as her shuttle descended through the atmosphere. People cheered and wept and held signs with her name. She had saved them. She had broken the blockade that would have strangled their civilization. She had given humanity a future. But when she stepped off the shuttle and faced the adoring crowds, she did not smile. She stood at attention and saluted. Not the cameras or the politicians, but the families who had lost loved ones in the battle. The mothers without children. The children without fathers. The price of victory. "We won," she said, her voice carried by 1,000 microphones. "But winning is not enough. Now we must build. We must prove that we deserve the place in the galaxy that we have claimed. We must show that we are worthy of the sacrifices that brought us here." She lowered her salute and looked directly into the cameras, speaking to billions of humans across 14 worlds. "The blockade is broken. The war is over. But our work is just beginning. We did not fight for conquest or revenge. We fought for the right to exist, to grow, to become something better than we were before. Now we have that right. Let us use it wisely." The crowd fell silent. No cheers, no applause, just quiet reflection on what they had been through and what lay ahead. Then, slowly, a single person began to clap. Then another. Then thousands. Not the wild cheering of victory, but a steady, determined sound. The sound of a species that had faced extinction and survived. The sound of a people ready to build the future they had fought for. Admiral Tanaka turned and walked away from the cameras. Her work was not done. It was barely beginning. But for the first time in a very long time, she allowed herself to feel something other than fear and determination. She felt hope. The emergency session of the Galactic Concord Council was the largest gathering in the organization's history. Representatives from over 800 species filled the Great Chamber, spilling beyond the original 17 platforms into hastily constructed viewing areas. Everyone wanted to be present for this moment. Everyone wanted to witness the reshaping of galactic civilization. Ambassador James Chen stood at the central speaking platform, the same position where he had been condemned 2 years earlier. The chamber that had once echoed with demands for human disarmament now buzzed with very different conversations. Fear still filled the air, but it was mixed with something else. Curiosity, respect, and for some, the first hints of hope. "Distinguished delegates," Chen began, his voice steady and clear. "2 years ago, I stood in this chamber, and listened as the Concord declared humanity a threat to galactic stability. I listened as ancient powers demanded we surrender our ability to defend ourselves. I listened as the galaxy conspired to break us. He paused, letting his gaze sweep across the assembled representatives. Today, I stand here again. Not as a supplicant, not as a defendant, but as an equal. The words hung in the air. No one interrupted. No one objected. The Prometheus Accords are dead. The containment fleet is scattered. The blockade that was supposed to strangle us into submission has been shattered. By any measure of power, humanity has proven itself capable of facing the greatest threats the galaxy can muster. Chen stepped forward, and his voice softened. But that is not why I am here today. I am not here to boast about our victory or demand reparations for our suffering. I am here to offer something that many of you may find more frightening than our weapons. I am here to offer partnership. The chamber rippled with whispered conversations. Partnership was not a common word in galactic diplomacy. The elder races had always dealt in terms of dominance and submission, alliance and rivalry. The concept of true partnership between species of vastly different ages and capabilities was almost unknown. We could have pursued your retreating fleets, Chen continued. We could have struck at worlds left undefended by ships sent to blockade us. We could have demanded territory, resources, slaves. We had the power. We had the moral justification. By your own traditions, we had earned the right of conquest. We chose differently. He turned to face the Soreth delegation directly. Threnvax sat among them, his crystalline form dim but attentive. He had spoken in favor of the peace during internal hegemony deliberations, arguing that humanity represented something new in the galaxy. Not all had listened, but enough had. Admiral Threnvax can tell you what happened when our fleets met his. He can tell you that we offered surrender terms before the battle was decided. He can tell you that we treated wounded enemies with the same care as our own people. He can tell you that when we had the power to destroy, we chose to heal. Chen returned to addressing the full chamber. Many of you are wondering why. Your strategists are running calculations that do not make sense. Your philosophers are debating concepts that do not fit your models. Let me explain in simple terms. We are not you. The words were not an insult. They were a statement of fact. Humanity is young. We have not forgotten our own history the way many of your species have. We remember what it was like to be weak, to be divided, to fight among ourselves for resources and territory. We remember the wars that nearly destroyed us. We remember the moment when we held the power to end our own civilization and chose instead to step back from the edge. That history shapes us. It teaches us that power alone is not enough. Strength without wisdom leads to destruction. Victory without mercy leads to endless cycles of revenge. We learned these lessons in blood and fire, and we have not forgotten them. Chen held up a small object. It was a seed, ordinary and unremarkable. On Earth, we have a saying. A society grows great when old men plant trees whose shade they will never sit in. We do not measure success by what we can take for ourselves. We measure it by what we can build for those who come after us. That is what we are offering the galaxy today. Not conquest, not dominance. A partnership aimed at building something better than what exists now. A future where young species do not need to fear extinction at the hands of their elders. A galaxy where strength protects the weak instead of preying upon them. He set the seed down on the speaking platform. The choice is yours. You can continue to fear us. You can spend your resources developing new weapons, new strategies, new alliances against us. You can turn the next 1,000 years into an arms race that impoverishes everyone. That is one future. Or you can join us in building something different. Something that has never existed before. A true community of species, where the old teach the young, and the young renew the old. Where conflicts are resolved through negotiation, rather than annihilation. Where the galaxy's resources are used for exploration and growth instead of endless preparation for war. We have shown you our power. Now let us show you our vision. The debate that followed lasted for weeks. Every species had opinions. Every delegation had concerns. The patterns of galactic civilization did not change overnight, and many were deeply skeptical that they could change at all. But the vote, when it finally came, surprised everyone. Full membership for humanity in the Galactic Concord. Full voting rights. Recognition of their right to maintain whatever military forces they deemed necessary for their own defense. And, most significantly, the creation of a new council position, the mediator for young species, with the responsibility of ensuring that no civilization would ever again face the threats humanity had faced. Ambassador Chen accepted the results with quiet dignity. He did not celebrate or gloat. He simply thanked the delegates for their decision and promised that humanity would work to justify their trust. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed in ways that historians struggled to categorize. The old patterns did not disappear immediately. Elder races still jockeyed for power and influence. Territorial disputes still arose, but there was a new factor in every calculation: the humans. Not because humanity threatened force. They rarely needed to. Their mere presence reminded everyone that young species were no longer easy prey. Their example demonstrated that there were other ways to respond to challenges, and their growing network of relationships showed that cooperation could be more profitable than conquest. Admiral Yuki Tanaka retired from active military service 3 years after the blockade ended. She had led humanity through its greatest crisis, and she was tired in ways that sleep could not heal. The weight of all those decisions, all those lives saved and lost, pressed down on her more heavily with each passing day. But retirement did not mean inactivity. The Concord offered her a position on the newly created Galactic Strategic Advisory Board. It was a role that would have been unthinkable just a few years earlier. A human helping to shape the military doctrine of civilizations that had been sailing the stars for millennia. She accepted, on one condition. The board's first priority would be developing protocols for responding to species in crisis. Never again would a young civilization face what humanity had faced. Never again would the choice be submission or annihilation. Threnvax, surprisingly, became one of her closest colleagues on the board. The ancient Sorath had been changed by his experience. He had seen the limits of traditional galactic thinking and was now curious about alternatives. He and Tanaka spent long hours debating philosophy, strategy, and the nature of civilizations. They did not always agree, but they always learned from each other. The Vrith Dominion took longer to come around. Their warrior culture did not easily accept defeat, and many refused to acknowledge that the humans had won fairly. But the younger generation of Vrith scholars began studying human history with unexpected fascination. They found much to admire in a species that had fought so many wars against itself and yet still existed. They saw parallels to their own struggles, and slowly, reluctantly, they began to reconsider their assumptions. The Diluvians were perhaps the most pragmatic. They had always played the long game, and they recognized that the game had fundamentally changed. Instead of trying to roll back human advances, they sought to benefit from them. Trade agreements were negotiated, technology was exchanged. Within a decade, human and Diluvian ships were exploring new territories together, their different capabilities complementing each other perfectly. On the 10th anniversary of the Battle of the Blockade, a ceremony was held at a special location. The UHS Prometheus had been decommissioned, not destroyed but placed in permanent orbit around Earth. Its weapons were removed, its engines stilled. It became a monument, a reminder of what humanity had accomplished and what they had chosen not to do. Visitors came from across the galaxy to see it. Some were human, paying respects to the ship that had saved their species. Others were alien, curious about the vessel that had changed everything. All of them walked the silent corridors with a sense of awe, trying to understand what had happened within these walls. Admiral Tanaka attended the ceremony. She was older now. Her black hair shot through with gray, her movements slower than they had once been, but her eyes were still sharp, still clear, still carrying the weight of everything she had seen and done. She stood on the bridge one final time, looking out through the viewport at the planet below. Earth hung in the void, blue and green and covered with clouds. Billions of people lived their lives down there, most of them too young to remember the blockade. They had grown up in a galaxy that, while not perfect, was safer than it had ever been before. That was worth something. That was worth everything. "Admiral?" a voice said behind her. She turned to find a young officer standing at attention. He was one of the new generation, born after the war. He wore the uniform of the United Human Fleet, now one of the most respected military forces in the galaxy. "At ease, Lieutenant," Tanaka said. "What is it?" "I just wanted to say thank you, ma'am, for everything you did, for everyone you saved, for giving us a future." Tanaka looked at him for a long moment. He was young and earnest and full of hope. He had never known hunger or fear. He had never watched friends die in battle. He had never made decisions that would determine whether millions lived or died. She hoped he never would. "Thank me by building something worthy of the sacrifices that brought us here," she said finally. "Thank me by treating other species the way we wanted to be treated. Thank me by being better than the galaxy expected us to be." The lieutenant saluted. "Yes, ma'am. I will try." He left the bridge, and Tanaka was alone again. She turned back to the viewport and watched Earth slowly rotate beneath her. Somewhere down there, children were playing games and dreaming about the future. Families were sharing meals and stories. People were falling in love and starting new lives. This was what she had fought for. Not glory, or power, or revenge. Just this. The simple, ordinary miracle of human lives being lived in peace. The Prometheus had been called many things over the years. A weapon of terror, a symbol of human aggression, a threat to galactic stability. And in some ways, all of those descriptions were accurate. It had been built to kill, and it had killed very effectively. But it had also been something else. It had been a shield for the defenseless, a voice for the voiceless, a fist raised against the darkness that threatened to swallow humanity whole. And in the end, it had been a teacher, showing the galaxy that power and mercy could exist together, that strength did not have to mean cruelty. Tanaka touched the viewport with her fingertips, just as she had done so many years ago after the Battle of Ketharan. "They will learn to respect us, or they will learn to fear us," she murmured, remembering the words she had spoken to her crew on that distant day. But they will learn. They had learned. And so had humanity. The respect was there now. Not the grudging acknowledgement of strength, but genuine respect for what humanity had chosen to become. The fear remained too, but it was a different kind of fear. Not fear of human weapons, but fear of what might happen if the galaxy fell back into its old ways. Fear of losing the fragile progress that had been made. That was a healthy fear. A useful fear. A fear that might, in time, help build something lasting. Tanaka smiled, a rare expression that softened her weathered features. She had been a warrior, a tactician, a leader. She had made terrible decisions and carried terrible burdens. She had sent people to die and watched enemies burn. But standing here, looking out at the world she had protected, she felt something she had not allowed herself to feel for a very long time. Peace. The universe was still vast and cold and uncaring. There were still dangers in the darkness between stars. Humanity would face new challenges, new enemies, new crises. The story was not over. It would never be over. But for this moment, in this place, surrounded by the memories of all they had been through, Admiral Yuki Tanaka allowed herself to rest. The galaxy had tried to break humanity. It had failed. Humanity had tried to teach the galaxy a better way. It was still trying. And that, in the end, was what mattered. Not the battles won or lost. Not the treaties signed or broken. Not the ships built or destroyed. What mattered was the constant, stubborn, impossibly human effort to make tomorrow better than today. Tanaka turned away from the viewport and walked off the bridge for the last time. Behind her, the Prometheus stood silent and still, a monument to what had been, and a promise of what could be. Above and around it, the stars waited. They were no longer cold and uncaring. They were a canvas, vast and empty, waiting for someone to paint something beautiful across its darkness. Humanity had made its first strokes. The masterpiece was still being created.